So I learned about chest PT services about 27 years ago, and have had various amounts of home chest PT several times a week, off and on for the last more than 20 years. I do not get chest PT services anymore because I had a double lung transplant 2 years ago. My chest PT frequency varied over time based on my health at the time. There were times I had chest PT services 2 times a week, 3 times a week, or when I was very critically ill before my transplant, every day. So I've tried many different methods of airway clearance, and I really preferred to have chest PT in my home. It was a much more effective way to keep my airways clear. It was another double check on how my lungs were sounding, what positions worked best to clear a particular area that I was struggling with, and I used my mechanical forms of chest PT clearance as a supplement to my home chest PT, but I never found them as effective as having a therapist come to my home and do my chest PT for me. So chest PT for me has been the best way to keep my lungs clear and frankly keep me alive. There were periods when I didn't have chest PT for one reason or another. If I was in school or was having trouble with insurance coverage, and when I look back at those periods, I really was a lot sicker and spent more time in the hospital during those periods of time. So one of the great things that my therapist did when she came to my home for my chest PT was listen to my lungs, tell me how they sounded versus how they had sounded my last visit. If there was a particular area that sounded that needed more work than another area, we could focus on that area. There were often times where I felt like I could not mobilize secretions because I couldn't necessarily feel an area, but she could hear a particular area, which helped me clear that area where I might not have been able to do that on my own. There were other times when I felt like I had a lot more to clear, but yet my lower lungs were clearer than I thought. So it was a nice double check to make sure that I was really getting the most of airway clearance. And as I've learned in the last 30 years, keeping my lungs clear was really the only way that I stayed alive in time, to last as long for my transplant. So one of the great things about having chest PT at home was it allowed me to shorten my hospital stays and my cleanouts. In my early days of chest PT, I was working full-time. I needed to continue to do that to maintain my insurance and support myself. So it was really important to me to have chest PT available to me. It allowed me to get out of the hospital faster. I was able to do my home IV antibiotics and have chest PT, which really mimicked what I was doing in the hospital. In my early days, I felt well enough to continue working, but it allowed me a shorter hospital stay. It allowed me to get back to my routine. It allowed me to continue my antibiotics and have chest PT, but continue on with my life. So it was very, very important to me to be able to put those pieces together to allow me to get out of the hospital sooner. As I got sicker and sicker and my hospital stays got a little bit longer each time, I still was able to shorten them because I had a chest PT therapist to go home to, and that I could manage my IV antibiotics on my own with a visiting nurse. So it really helped me to get back home, and even at my sickest with my family, being in my home was so much easier for them than me being in the hospital. The trip into Boston was nearly impossible for my school-aged son to do every day, but yet being at home was such a comfort to him, and my husband could continue to go to work and provide our insurance, and chest PT services allowed me to stay in my home much more than if I had just been dependent on my hospital and inpatient chest PT. Chest PT services has been great throughout my life at finding a therapist to accommodate me in the different places that I've lived. When I was living in downtown Boston, they were able to find someone to come into my apartment, and when I moved out to the suburbs, they found a therapist that lived close to me and it enabled me to have continuity and keep that same therapist for the majority of the time that I lived, in the suburbs. So in my years of having CF, I very often was chasing technology in hopes that something new would come along that would help. New antibiotics, new ways to continue my life. But in reality, the one true consistent thing that really helped me was my chest PT. And keeping my lungs clear and not needing antibiotics and treating the source before it became a problem was really the thing that consistently helped me the most. Waiting until you had an infection and needing antibiotics was always treating the result and not the cause. And my chest PT really allowed me to stay ahead of getting to the point where my lungs were infected and I needed antibiotics. And as what happened with me at the end, I was resistant to all antibiotics. So staying ahead of those cleanouts and the antibiotic that was treating the cause and not the source of my problem was really consistently very helpful for me. So chest PT for me was the one consistent thing that always helped me to try to keep myself as healthy as possible. And it allowed me to be able to do a little bit more exercise. It allowed me to have a little bit more of a normal life as much as I could. And it allowed me to have hope that when that transplant day really came, that I was physically able to withstand transplant without exercise and without trying to keep your body as strong as possible. Transplant can't happen. So Kathy was really instrumental at making sure that I did as much exercise as was physically possible, no matter how much I didn't feel like doing it. And it really made the difference in my ability to survive my transplant and recover and thrive. And I could have never imagined being able to do now what I have never done in my life. But thanks to Chest PT and to Kathy, she encouraged me to dream big and to say, someday you're going to make it to an exercise class and you're going to finish it and you're not going to be short of breath. And that was something I had never envisioned myself ever being able to do. So exercise really is so important. I wish someone could have told me before my transplant how important it would be in terms of recovery. But I can assure you that anything you can do to keep your lungs clear, to allow you to exercise and take care of yourself, there isn't anything better that you can do for your quality of life. Every step I took that first day, I thought, oh, Kathy was right. If I had no muscle, I wouldn't be standing. And I stood within 12 hours of my transplant and walked. And I hadn't walked before my transplant. So, I was on my feet and I had some muscle tone left. So she was right.